Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our new series of webinars, Keep Up with Pryme, today the construction edition. In case we haven't met before, I'm Laura Andradas, Marketing Lead at Pryme Global, and joining me is Aske Holst, Product Manager at Pryme Global. I'll see you again at the end of the webinar for the Q&A, so please drop your questions in the chat as we go. And now, without further delay, let's get started. So Aske, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So starting off today, we have one of the first webinars in our Keep Up with Pryme series, and we're switching things around a little bit this time. We've changed our structure of releases. So in the past, we had one release every month, and they were kind of equal. In order to streamline everything and reduce the number of presentations that you have to go through, we are now going with a model with 4 releases per year. These are the major releases. These will come in February, May, August, and November. There will be minor releases in between with small enhancements and bug fixes and something we urgently need to add, usually for customer needs. But otherwise, there should be 4 major releases per year. This webinar should really have been in November after the November release, but because we haven't done anything since July, basically, actually since June, we thought it was kind of overdue to have a presentation of what's new since then. So this is kind of an off presentation, but going forward, we will have presentations with every major release, again being February, May, August, and November. And we will also be doing it in separate editions that are targeted to different verticals. So instead of having one for everybody, where you had to listen through everything that was new related to non-profit and construction and professional service and legal services, we are now doing one presentation that is tailored for each vertical. That might, of course, mean that if you're interested in all the areas, there will definitely be some overlaps, but that is what we're going to do. So let's get right into it. We're looking at what has happened since July and focusing on the high-level changes. There's, of course, a lot of minor changes. They can be found in release notes, but this is what I selected as being the top tier things that has changed since July across both Progress's advanced projects, but also some of the Pryme apps that we are integrating with that. What we're looking at is the life cycle that we usually present within when we work in projects. That is a setup phase, a plan phase, a work phase, and an invoice and pay and get paid phase. And with each one of those, there are different features added. We'll start with the setup phase where we have new pricing for resources and new cross expense markups. So let's jump right into it. First up, the new pricing for resources. The new pricing for resources is mostly relevant when resources are priced out on a time and material basis, and that might not always be the case for construction projects. So this is not super relevant in all construction cases. It's probably more relevant in professional services and other businesses, but still you need to know about it. Microsoft introduced a new pricing feature some time back. It is still not required. It is an optional feature, and it can be found under the feature management. It's called the new sales price experience, and it changes the way you set prices with price lists. If you have that one enabled, and that one will be mandatory from next spring, it is possible to change the pricing system in Progresses as well. And that is done from within the Progresses feature management. If you haven't looked at the progressive feature management, there's actually a number of features that can be enabled in there. So regardless of this feature, I would suggest that you take a look at the features in there. The feature we're looking at today is the use new sales price experience for resources, which will allow you to use the Microsoft new sales price experience for pricing the resources even within projects or progresses. If you do not turn this on, and it is not turned on by default, the plan is to turn it on by default with version 29. Then everything will be as it has been before. But if you turn it on, the pricing structure will be different. Then it will be using the price lists and project price lists that come with standard BC. One of the advantages to that is that you can do pricing by customer or customer price group. The downside is that the pricing hierarchy is different, and there's some things you cannot do. You cannot do pricing by resource subgroup, for instance. And there's also a number of other differences. So it's definitely not something that is just a clean switchover from one structure to the other. You will need to test out and see if it really works with how the pricing is set up. Next up is expenses. For a lot of customers, we've heard that when you have rechargeable expenses and disbursements, there is sometimes a markup. And if the markup is defined globally, it can actually be hard to set up, or it could be hard to set up. That we've changed. In the expense prices, you are now much more free to set up a markup on a expense code, but across every project, or even have a general markup. In this case, I have a fallback markup of 10% that applies to all projects, all expenses, everything regardless. But you can, of course, still do specific markups, and they can now also be done across all expense codes. So you could say for project 1, there is a 12% markup on everything regardless of the expense code. So that can help out in a number of scenarios when you have an agreed markup of expenses, especially if you're using expenses for subcontracted work or materials, etc. Next up, we are looking at the plan phase. And this is one where we will have one of the biggest changes. We have introduced a new app called Pryme Project Work. It is available on AppSource, and it will be included in our construction industry package. The idea with project work is that you can plan for work items and you can track time on work items. And in a construction scenario, that makes especially time tracking a lot easier, because each individual just needs to select the correct work item. They don't need to know anything about customers or projects or tasks. They just select the piece of work that they are currently working on. So let's have a look at what that looks like. I have created a project in here, a construction project, and this is a regular project. There's nothing special about it. But what is new is we have a number of columns here: not started work items, in progress work items, and completed work items. And so what is a work item? A work item is a piece of work that is smaller than a task usually. So especially if you keep a relatively high level work breakdown structure, or keep a work breakdown structure that is actually more of a cost breakdown structure, you might want to create work items for the actual work being performed. In my case, I have a task for a survey, and I've created a work item which resides in here and is currently in progress. So I can track how the work is progressing in here. Somebody is working on the survey. In this case, there's a work item behind it. It is assigned to Prakash. It has a certain start date. It's overdue. It should have been completed, but it has not yet. And there can even be more detail to it. In the construction, I also have some work items, something not started, something in progress, and we could actually add a new work item in here. So I have one work item for some weatherproofing assigned to Daniel that is to be started a bit in the future, and I could add a new one. So let's create a new work item. This is my work item. It starts out blank, but to get it started, I'll apply a template. And I will use the install panel template because that's what we need to do. And this is for the installation of an electrical panel. Of course, it could be a long description of everything to do. Here I kept it short. I can design who this is assigned to. I could also do that at a later point. I can set a start date and a due date. That is not mandatory, but if you want to keep track of dates, you can do that. And you can also set a checklist. In this case, I got a checklist with my template, and so I can keep track of how far I am in this work item. So I could say when I started, as soon as I verified the site conditions, I would mark those as completed. Let's actually assign this to me. So I am Prakash. So this is assigned to me. We could set a start date. I will start this today, and I should complete this by Friday. So now this is assigned to me. And you can see this is highlighted in bold because the start date is today, so it's not overdue, but it's almost due. I can also set a stage code here, which defines where I am in the progress. And I could say, well, I've actually started it, so it is now in progress. And so that is how I track it. Let me actually show how these stages work. So getting back to this, I can show a Kanban board of all the work items I have. So this is just for this project. Open up a Kanban board, and now these are the work items we have. Looks like there's something to do. There's something in progress, including the install panel that I just added. And there could be something where we said it has to be inspected. This is now done, etc. And we can move things here. So I could move the rough-in from in progress to inspect. And you can define what stages you want to have in here. You don't need to use this. This is optional, but if you want to keep this overview, that can make it a lot easier. You can also view this in different ways. You could look at this as who it is assigned to. So I can see the work for Connie, the work for Daniel, the work for Prakash. If you look at this at a higher level outside of the context of a project, you can even have it with swim lanes by project or swim lanes by customer, so you get that high level overview. And just as any other page in Business Central, you can of course also change the filtering, create your own filters, etc. on this data. So this is the general idea. And again, for the checklist, if I go in and I look at what I was working on, my panel installation, I can then say, well, now I've verified the site conditions. I will mark that as completed. If there's some of the work items that needs to be done by somebody else, we could create a new work item for that. And so I could say the inspection of this, let's create that as a new work item. And that I will then assign to Claire to do. And maybe there's also a start and a due date. And there could even be a checklist to that. So I could use a template for a checklist to that. So you can have a whole hierarchy of steps of checklists in here. So that's a concept of the work item. You break down your task into smaller details that are not relevant to keep in here. That also means that you can budget on a high level, but you can have the work items on that very low level. That also means you can use this for time tracking. So that is the next step. And here we're really switching over into the work area. So possibly what I showed here was saying track time on work items in the plan area. That probably should have been under in the work area, but yeah, bear over with me here. So let's say I'm now working on this and I want to track my time. Now I have this very complicated role center because I want to be able to show everything, but for a normal person, they would only have a few icons in here. One of them would probably be the start stop button if they're using Pryme Time. And coming onto site in the morning, I could press my start button. I go in and see what are my work items. It's, oh, I have the site survey, not doing that today, but I'm going to work on the panel installation. Click that, okay, and it's tracking my time. So I didn't have to consider the customer or the project or the task number. I just need to select the right work item and I'm ready to go. Makes it a lot easier. And then in the end, when I'm leaving, I might press stop. I could also be starting on something else. Maybe I'm working on the site survey finally and tracking some time on that as well. And then stopping that when I'm done. As usual, that creates my time tracking entries that I can later review. And these now already have all the information about the project and the customer and everything else. So there's nothing more for me to do here. It's all included. There's no risk of selecting anything wrong. There is demo data. Whether that works or not, that depends on where your company is set up. If it is a newly set up demo company, that can be included by default. But otherwise, it is part of the Contoso demo tool. So within the Contoso demo tool, you can use that to set up demo data for a lot of different areas in Business Central. And Pryme Project Work is one of those areas. So if you create a new company with demo data, you can actually at that point select to also have demo data for project work. It will create multiple different work processes with different stages. It will create a number of work items for you with checklist. It will create some templates, etc. So that is a great way to get started using the Contoso demo tool. The downside to the Contoso demo tool is that it doesn't always work if you're starting off a Kronos company. So be aware of that. But you can do some configuration and set up what resources you would like it to use if you're starting on an existing setup. But it does expect there to be some projects created from within the jobs module, and then they have certain numbers. So there's a bit of a conflict if you have created demo data for progressors and that has overridden your demo projects with new projects, and then you run the Pryme Project Work, which expects the Contoso demo projects. But yes, it does work if it doesn't conflict with the progressive demo data. Looking at time tracking, we've added a number of new features. Now, these new features are probably more for the people in the back office than they are for people on site, so they're more for the engineers and the project managers, etc. I cannot really show them in here because they require a bit of live data, and so I will cheat a little bit and jump to another environment, which is actually from my own personal calendar. And what we're seeing in the time tracking calendar here is that we've not only added the column for Outlook, where I can see all my meetings, we also added a column for Teams, where I can see all the calls I had during the day. And so that might be a very easy way to track my time. I simply click the plus button and add that to my time tracking. So that can make it a lot easier for those back office people to track their time, remember what they did during the day. If you have a timesheet like this, more or less completed, you added what you could, but you still find that there is a number of gaps in here where you couldn't really figure out what you did, especially if you're not tracking your time as you go, but you're at Friday afternoon. We have a new feature for completing your timesheet. Again, I will cheat a little bit here for demo purposes and show this in a demo setup, because what it will do is it will go ahead and it will try to find everything it can about what I did in the week. So looking in my calendar, looking in my Teams calls, but also most importantly, looking in my emails, all the emails I sent, all the emails I received, trying to correlate that with what I've already tracked and see if it can fill in the gaps with something intelligent. And that creates a suggestion. You can then later come in and say, well, that was a good suggestion, that was not a good suggestion, and you can adjust that. Of course, that can be hard to look at as a list, so add them in. You can see where they show up, and you can also then see a bit of detail of why it suggested something for you, and figuring out, is that a good idea or a bad idea? In this case, it added something about a bug that I worked on, and it estimated that 18 minutes was used to writing that email or reading the original email, which probably makes sense. So a bit of help, but it's still only a suggestion from the Copilot. On the topic of timesheets, we have a new feature in timesheets. And timesheets are generally working very well until somebody does something and you later on realize that it was a mistake. And so one of the features that have been added is an improved system behind reopening timesheets, where the reopening of a timesheet will not reverse everything as it did before. In previous versions, when you reopened a timesheet, everything would be marked for reversing, and when you then submitted the new timesheet, you had to approve everything again, and it would for every single entry create a reversing entry and a new entry, which, especially if you had started invoicing, could add some extra work, because it would try to reverse that out and put it in back again. Now the system has been changed to only update the entries that you're actually making changes to. Let's have a look. So if I have my timesheet in here, let's open up my timesheet. I have a very little time on Monday on each of these. Let's add in some more significant entries here so we have something to work with. I now submit my timesheet, nothing changed so far, and I might go in and approve all my time, nothing changed so far. And then we of course realized that something went wrong. There was a mistake in this, and now everything is posted. I need to go in, I need to find my timesheet, and I can decide to reopen it. And at this point, we then keep a log of what was in the timesheet at the time of reopening. If I then go in and say, well, this should have been 1.5 hours instead of 2. Oh, that was not what I wanted. I wanted to actually say that this shouldn't be a new one. I want to delete this one, and this one should be 1.5. So now this is changed to 1.5. I can submit my timesheet again, and it now goes for approval. I will not get all the entries for approval again. Instead, I will only get that one entry, which was 2 and is now 1.5. This is the only entry I get for approval, and then I can approve this. And that then reverses the original entry of 2 and creates a new entry of 1.5. Also because this could be on a completely different project, it could be on a different task. There could be so many changes. We reverse it out, we create a new. It's almost like the moving of entries from one place to another, or changing quantities like that. So a lot less entries in the background. for this. Next up, invoicing. Here we have a number of different changes, some smaller, some bigger. Let's get through them. The first one is something that was originally introduced with Business Central, the ability to do billing by task, where on a project I can decide to not have a single bill to a customer, but have multiple customers. So on the project card, in the section of invoicing, there is a task billing method that can be set to multiple customers. This has existed for some time in Business Central. It was disabled with Progressives because it created a lot of complexities because we have so many additional billing methods like split billing and percent complete billing and progress billing. And what does it really mean if you have multiple customers but also have split billing or etc.? So it took some time to get it in. Now it's there. If you enable using multiple customers, you can then on each task select which customer you want to invoice for. So that can be useful in some scenarios. Be aware, if you change the task billing method, you cannot change it back again to one customer. You're now stuck with having this being multiple customers. Next up, we have progress billing lines can now be imported. So if you've been working with progress billing, and let's create some progress billing in here, I probably need to set up a number series for this. Let's see if it will allow me. Nope, I need to set up a number series. So I will open up my project setup and define a number series for progress billing. In this case, I'll just take something and we get back to our project and say progress billing. I would like to create a new progress billing, application billing. There is now an option in the progress billing lines to import progress billing lines. And the way you import progress billing lines is you start with an import template. So create import template that gives you an Excel sheet. You can then open that Excel sheet and fill that in as a template. And of course, there's a lot of different fields. These are basically the same fields you would see in here. They can be filled in, you can save that, and then you can use that to import. So if you are importing from some external system or another Excel sheet, you now have a template of how they can be imported. You fill in that template, and then you can use that to import. So it's similar to the import functionality we have in the journals and other places. Another invoicing feature is invoicing from project planning. If you have a project like this, where you have created planning lines, and here I have some planning lines for some items, then you have always been able to create sales orders from within here. There is this sales order action where you can say create a sales order, and you could go in and select to create sales orders for some or all of these project planning lines. That works great in a lot of scenarios, but if you would like to go the reverse way and create a sales invoice and then pull in the planning lines, possibly from across projects, you can now do that. So if I go in and I find a sales invoice, and it has, of course, to be for that customer. So in this case, it has to be for Relic Cloud. I can open up an invoice for Relic Cloud. I currently don't have any lines on it, but I can go in under the line menu and say, get project planning lines. And then it will show me the project planning lines I have. I can select whatever is relevant of these lines and say, I want this. And then I might have some setup with posting groups, etc. That's another topic. but this is the way I can add my project plan lines, and this can be across multiple projects. So I think that's one of the main scenarios for this. Lastly, we have a feature in a new app called Pryme Project Subcontracting, which is for paying time and material subcontractors. And so I hear you ask, why is there a new subcontracting feature? Don't we have subcontracting in advanced projects? And yes, we do. I'm not going to show a full demo of the new subcontracting capabilities, but I will show a quick overview just to show what is the difference, because I think that is the main question here. So actually starting on the right-hand side, the progresses advanced project subcontracting, which most of you will know about. You will have a project with tasks, and for a project, and even maybe for a specific task, you can create a subcontract with details of how much are we subcontracting out for specific tasks, what are the quantities, what is the pricing, all those details are put into that subcontract. So it could be a piece of work, or it could be 70 hours of work at a certain rate, etc. You can also connect it with insurance details, other details. There can be a whole workflow around it. There's a lot of details that go into this. And out of this, you can create a payment request, maybe based on time posting, but it could also just be manual input. And from that, you can create a purchase invoice and pay out. The main topic here is the subcontract with details, which is a great feature. There's a lot of possibilities to really control that subcontract and also have that approval flow and a clear agreement around that subcontract. Pryme Project Subcontracting, on the other hand, is a much more minimal setup. So there is no creation of subcontracts. There is simply resources that are connected to a subcontractor. They track their time on one or more projects, and then the system will create a subcontractor statement out of that, possibly across multiple projects, but for a given time period. And out of that, you can either create a self-billing invoice, or you can do matching towards a received invoice. For the received invoice, you would probably send that statement to the subcontractor and say, well, you have tracked 117 hours in our system. We would expect you to send us an invoice for 117 hours. In that case, we can match that up and see that it matches with the pricing we have set up, etc. And then we can pay out. But it is a more simplified scenario where there's no need to set up the subcontractor contracts with all the details. So it's not that one is better than the other. This is a simplified flow, mostly made for professional services and ad hoc work, whereas the one built into advanced projects is much more for work specified and agreed in detail ahead of time. So, but check it out. It is available on AppSource. There is a QR code here for the Pryme Project Subcontracting, and also a QR code for the Pryme Project Work if you want to try that out. But if you want to try it, also feel free to contact me or anybody else in the company to have a demo and a more detailed discussion of what this can do for you.